Hello and welcome to the Digital Deviants Tour. I'm Eric Savini, and today I have some very special guests, one of whom is my own mom, aka Mama C, aka Lynne Savini herself. She taught me absolutely everything I know about activism and about being a good ally. And we also have two additional special guests who can show us how all of our fights against the current regime, against ICE, against police departments across the country is interconnected, and that we need to be paying attention to who we are forgetting in this moment. And before I go any further introducing our wonderful co-host in Austin, I would be remiss not to acknowledge the pain that our nation is feeling right now amidst the loss of Black lives at the hands of our nation's law enforcement. So to any Black folks who may be watching, your lives matter. To my predominantly white fans, we must do better. I've posted a link in our Crowdcast description. You can press it by clicking the little I at the top of the page for those who are looking to make a difference, for our friends who identify as QTPOC. In the meantime, please join me in a moment of silence to honor the lives of Tony McDade, Breonna Taylor, George Floyd, Ahmaud Arbery, and too many others. Thank you. I am now so excited to pass the speaking stick to one of my favorite places on all of Earth, is Book People in my hometown of Austin, Texas. And Christina Lebron has been so helpful in the past few weeks as we try to figure out how to talk about books in the middle of a pandemic. And so, Christina, thank you so much for having me.
Thank you. Thank you for making us part of this event and of your book tour. I'm Christina Lebron. I'm the Events and Marketing Manager here at Book People in Austin, Texas. I want to start by thanking everyone who is tuning in. And again, thank you, Eric, for allowing us to host this conversation. I also want to thank everyone who has purchased The Deviant's War through Book People. We are really happy to see the support that readers are putting behind this book, which just came out yesterday. So congratulations, Eric, on the new book. And thank you for championing indie booksellers across the country. To those of you who might not know Book People, you can follow us at Book People on all social media platforms, and you'll be able to find our booksellers recommending books and learn more about other virtual conversations such as this one. You can also get Eric's book through Book People by going through the purchase link below. Now I'd like to give our guest for tonight a warm Book People welcome. We have Eric Savini. He's an award-winning historian, LGBTQ plus history. He graduated summa cum laude from Harvard College and received his PhD in history from the University of Cambridge, where he was a great Gates Scholar. The Deviant's War, the Homosexual versus the United States of America, a secret history of the fight for gay rights that began a generation before Stonewall, is his first book. So now I'd like to give you, Eric, and our guest, Laura Savini, today a welcome from Book People. Thank you.
Thank you so much. All right. Can we see Hilda? I think if you guys can squeeze a little bit more, I don't want to crop you out. Yeah, there you go. Thank you so much, Christina. My name is Eric Savini, and I am so excited to introduce a few of our special guests today. First is the one and only Lynne Savini, as I said. She taught me everything I know about activism and everything else, but also on how to be an ally to people who have gone through much worse experiences than my own, and how to use platforms and privilege for good. And I think that's a conversation that we need to be having. And I'm so excited also to introduce two people who I think spurred both of us into activism. Is Hilda and her son Ivan, who fled from Guatemala in 2017. Ivan, you were 12 years old, right? At the time?
No, he was.
How old?
Oh no, we can't hear him.
Uh-oh. Here we go.
Sorry.
Yeah, how old were you?
I was 7.
7 years old. So y'all fled when you were, Vaughn, you were 7 years old to escape the violence in your home country. And since coming to the US, they have been living in sanctuary at St. Andrew's Presbyterian Church, which is my own childhood church, in First Unitarian Universalist Church in Austin. So thank you both. Muchas gracias a ustedes para estar aquí. So there's a little bit of an echo, so I'm sorry if I'm going to be kind of toggling it. Thank you for handling that. But I want to start, Mom, with you, and first hearing about how you got involved in activism of any kind, and why you thought it was important to start fighting back.
Well, let's go back in history. I graduated from high school in 1968 when there were tons of demonstrations all around me protesting the Vietnam War. And when I was in college, that's where I think the seeds were planted for activism, because I remember learning about organizations like SDS and wondering about them. And I actually did have my first experience with civil disobedience in my first year in college. There was a sociology professor that they were going to fire, and we decided to take over the administration building and do a sit-in to prevent him from being fired. So we did leave before the police came, so no one was arrested that time. So that's basically where it all began, I think.
A child of the 60s.
Yeah.
Because you're about the same age as a lot of the younger activists that I talk about in my book, who were really radicalized in that moment. Because you were, 18 years old during the 68 DNC. Your sister, my aunt, was there, right?
Yeah, at the Chicago convention. Yeah.
Yeah, so it's so interesting to talk to so many people, because when you study recent American history, it's easy to forget that so many people, especially in my generation as we study it, are still around. And so it's so important to be asking questions about what radicalized you, what lessons did you learn? And so I want to now go back to 2017. And so Yvonne, I wanted to ask you, you just celebrated your 14th birthday, I understand, and you've been in detention, sanctuary, or locked up in some way for a lot of those birthdays. So I'm wondering if you could tell me about your experiences.
Well, it was hard because every year I was here and I could never get out.
Mm-hmm. And for people who may not know, Mom, can you explain a little bit about what your mission is with ASN and with St. Andrew's in protecting Ilda and Yvonne?
Well, Ilda and Yvonne are in sanctuary at St. Andrew's Presbyterian Church, and they have been there for 4 years. And like Yvonne said, for most of his birthdays, he's either been in detention or locked up in some sense. And so I've been working on the campaign of the Austin Sanctuary Network to free them. And we're still to this day trying to get them free. So we want to have politicians use their power to force the director of ICE to grant them. Right now we're working on a stay of removal for them, a COVID-19 emergency stay of removal, because they not only have to worry about the virus, and they also have to worry about being deported, because if they ever had to go to the doctors, that trip from the church to the doctors, ICE could intercept, grab them and deport them, and then put them in a detention center with tons of other people where the infection could be very bad. And we're expecting a second wave, and so it's actually very urgent that we get this stay of removal now so that they can be safe. So that's basically what we're working on at the moment.
Mm-hmm. And Mom, you were a Spanish teacher. That was your first job, right? And so I studied Spanish a bit in high school and college, but you're definitely the one using it more often now. So I'm wondering if I could ask Ilda a question, and then maybe you could interpret for us. Is that okay?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, I would love to ask Ilda, as a mother, what is the hardest thing for you about all of this?
Hilda, como una madre, una mamá, ¿qué es la cosa más difícil sobre todo esto?
Pues que uno tiene que estar en lucha y es triste, me siento muy triste que Iván tiene que pasar en esta situación y no puedo, pues quisiera poder salir con él y tener la libertad.
She's very sad, and she really thinks it's very bad for Yvonne. She wants his freedom, and it's just a very sad situation.
And for people who may not, because I certainly wasn't aware of it until really you got involved after I went to college and graduated, about the current situation is the reason why families who are asylum seekers are staying in churches is because there's a kind of like an unwritten rule that ICE or police departments won't enter churches in order to arrest people seeking asylum. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. So Mom, one of my questions for you is, how you first found out about this problem that, our community is facing, especially in Austin, and what made you feel like you had the obligation to get involved? Because obviously we're white, even though we speak Spanish. Why did you feel like it was your job to join this fight?
Well, as soon as I heard her story, and I don't know if you want me to tell how I met her, somebody from our church at St. Andrew's asked me to give Ilda a Mary Kay facial just to make her feel better and happier and even more beautiful. And so we did that, and she did. She looked gorgeous. And I think I bonded with her, and I heard her story and how she fled Guatemala to save her life and the life of her child. How could you not fight for that? I became very passionate and wanted to do whatever I could possibly do to help them. And I knew I spoke Spanish, not perfectly, but enough that I felt that I could really help a lot because I had that skill. So that's when I actually was invited to go to a meeting that was part of the Austin Sanctuary Network. And when I went to that meeting, it happened to be a campaign meeting. I had no idea it was going to be a campaign meeting, but they were talking about all these different ways to free them. And it really inspired and motivated me and made me want to help and to do whatever I could. And so I got involved in the fight.
Well, thank you for also radicalizing me to this issue. And I think what you said about their story, ¿Cómo se dice story? Es un
Cuento.
Cuento. Tu cuento es...
Historia.
Historia.
Es muy
Sí.
importante que podemos entender la historia para decidir de luchar. We have to understand other people's stories in order to be able to fight for them. And I think right now in this moment, I would encourage anyone who isn't certain whether they should be taking to the streets or whether they have a moral obligation to be fighting against police brutality, proclaiming Black Lives Matter, to be also fighting in solidarity with other movements like what the Austin Sanctuary Network is doing, protecting asylum seekers, demanding that ICE be defunded. When you read their stories and you read about Tony McDade and the things that he had to put up with on a daily basis, when you ask people questions about their own lives and realize that the horror that we're feeling as a country right now is a daily experience for so many people. And I've seen a lot of people who are frustrated right now. I know Los Angeles has a curfew. I know people have already been frustrated because of the pandemic. But if you can only imagine the frustration of being locked in a church for 4 years, being unable to leave for fear that you will be arrested and sent back to certain death, imagine. And I think it's that empathy that we are granted as part of the queer community, because we understand how discrimination and persecution functions. It gives us a unique position to be able to understand and empathize with other marginalized communities. And I'm so grateful for all of you being on today to show to us and to prove to us that all of our fights are interconnected. And so thank you for joining, all of you. Muchas gracias a todos por estar aquí. And so, Mom, one question I have on that note, now that we know, that we do have a moral obligation to be joining up in these fights, what can we do? So, Mom, I'm wondering if you might be able to ask that from Ilda. ¿Qué podemos hacer?
¿Qué tipo de ayuda? ¿Qué pueden la gente hacer para ayudarte?
Que ayudaran a hablar con los congresistas y que pueden pedir a los congresistas que nos ayude a parar nuestra deportación, porque
Sí.
entre más personas que pueden ayudar, puedes tener la libertad.
Okay. To talk to the Congress people and to ask them to help us and to pressure them to give us our freedom. it's hard for me to remember everything she says, so I try to. Si puedes hablar corto, yo traduzco y después habla más, ¿ok? Porque mi mente no recuerde nada.
She said she can't remember anything. For anyone who's
Pues que nos ayude a hablar con los congresistas para que los congresistas puedan parar nuestra deportación y sí, que paren de maltratar a las personas.
And stop treating people badly.
So what can you say what they said about contacting, was it Congress people?
Oh yeah. That what I said before, that please contact the Congress people to tell them to please help free them.
Mm-hmm. And specifically in Austin, Texas, what Congress people have you been in touch with? If people want to actually demand that they be freed and to get this, remind me the term one more time, the
stay of removal.
A stay of removal. Who is it exactly that people should be contacting?
We want to force the director of ICE to grant this stay of removal. So we're actually asking people to contact all their Congress people because it is a federal issue. So even if you live in a different state or anywhere in the United States, if you could contact your congressman and say, listen, there are people in sanctuary everywhere in the many places in the United States, and this is a federal issue. They should not be in sanctuary. They need to be helped. In particular, in Texas, of course, we're talking to a lot of the Texas Congress people, but we're also talking to people out of state. So it definitely is a federal issue. We need pressure on all congressmen and women.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so that's good to know that because it's the decision of the director of ICE,
Yes.
that it's this pressure that comes from the congressional level, which funds ICE, that can make and force this decision. So please, if you're listening, please, while you're watching, look up your congressperson if you don't already know who they are, and demand that this action, a stay of removal, a stay of removal, be granted for Hilda and Ivan Ramirez, right?
Yes, and also Alirio. Alirio lives in a different church. He's the one that's at the UU Church, the Universal University Church. Alirio lives there. He's from El Salvador, and he also has been in sanctuary for 2 years there. So our campaign is for all three, Hilda, Ivan, and Alirio, even though they're at two different churches.
Mm-hmm.
So yes.
And I wish I had it. I think it's in my car. But one thing that I have is my mask, Hilda, that you made, and I've been wearing it in Los Angeles with the butterflies on it, and I absolutely love it, and I feel like a star anytime I wear it. So thank you. And I was wondering if you could tell us a little bit more about these masks, if people from around the country might want to buy one. Mom, do you mind? Or
I think Ivan translated that.
Okay.
¿Quieres hablar de las máscaras, Hilda?
Pues estamos haciendo máscaras para los homeless.
We're making masks for homeless people, for people without homes.
Oh, okay.
Sí, entonces es lo que estamos haciendo para ayudar a la gente.
That's what we're doing to help the people.
Okay, so if people want, Mom, maybe you can tell us where should people go to buy these masks, or if they want to contribute to the production of them for the homeless community, who in Austin is especially a terrible problem, and so many of them are left without masks or the resources to protect themselves. Where should people go?
There's a link, and I did give it to Vivian, and I think she was going to post it.
Yep, it's there.
Yeah, I don't see it, but I'm sure it's there.
So I'll answer my own question. So it's at the top. If you see Austin, Eric Servini in conversation with Lynne, there's a little I next to it. If you click that I, that's the description for the event, and there's a link to where you can contribute and either buy a mask or contribute to donate them to the homeless community in Austin. So on behalf of everyone, Ilda, thank you for doing that and for taking on, muchas gracias a usted, for taking on this task, because again, I think in any national crisis, we always have to remember who we're forgetting, and even you are doing that for us. So muchas gracias. I wish I could say all that in Spanish. Mom, can you kind of, I think
Yvonne can do it. Yvonne.
Okay. Oh, I used to be so good at Spanish, and then I lost it. So this is a good excuse to make me pick it back up. So Mom, we got to talk about your arrest. We got to talk about your arrest. So for people who don't know, of course, there are hundreds of people getting arrested every day right now in acts of civil disobedience. Mom, you are the only person I know, which may say worse things about me than you, who has been arrested for civil disobedience. So I'm wondering if you could tell everyone about what happened, what were you fighting for, and we'll start with that, and then we'll get into the lessons of what it taught you.
Okay. Well, a little bit of what a build up to that episode. We were working really hard to get a stay of removal for Ilda, Yvonne, and Illyrio. And what happened was we did all the right things. You know, we did what you're supposed to do. Call your congressman and tell them to help you and ask for their help. So we did. We made lots of phone calls, asked, got no response, or a response saying, sorry, we can't help you. So then we tried to do petitions, and we had hundreds of people signing petitions and hoping that, and being sent to the congressional offices, and hoped that pressure would make them do something to talk to the ICE director, to force the ICE director to grant this stay of removal. And petitions didn't help. So then we thought, what else? We got to do something. We got to do something a little bit more forceful. So we decided we were going to do a sit-in in a couple offices, in congressional offices in Austin. So I was assigned the office of the Republican office, and then
the more dangerous one.
Yes. So others went to the Democrat office, and so we just went. Ilda went and talked in the office, and we asked them to please call right now. Call the representative he was then in Washington, and tell him to call Bible, the director of ICE, and tell him he needs to give Ilda, Yvonne, and Illyrio a stay of removal. They need to be free, even if it's for a few months. So they didn't do it. It got to be 5 o'clock in the afternoon. The office closed, and all of a sudden, well, it wasn't all of a sudden, because gradually all these policemen started gathering in the office, outside the office. And I think there were over 10 police people there, quite a few.
For a peaceful.
And then there were 4 of us who refused to leave. There was a man that was in his 70s. There was a woman, 62, probably, something like that. There was a young woman. She was probably about 23 at the time. And then I was at that time, probably, I think, 68. So there were 4 of us, and they arrested us. They did the body search, and they did the handcuffs, and then they let us out. We wanted to all go together, but they made us go individually out to the police cars. So we all individually, as we went, yelled, "Free Ilda, Ivan, and Illyrio," until we got to the police car. And then we ended up in a holding cell in the San Diego detention, whatever it is there. Yeah.
You spent the night.
We spent 13 hours there. Do you want me to tell you about that experience?
Yeah. Please.
That was something, it was really eye-opening to see how people who are put in jail are treated. I mean, they don't even look you in the eye. They treat you like you're less than a number. I mean, you're not a unique individual any longer. And they take everything from you, and then they put us in this holding cell. And I have to say, the nicest, friendliest people were the people in the holding cell with us. They were they were really, really nice. And one of the cute little girls, I shouldn't say little girl, she was a young woman, came up to us and she was so concerned, and she said, "Oh my God, are they going after old people now?" And she was so concerned. Of course, we were dying because she called us old people. But
Sorry.
Other than that, but the food was horrible. I remember the turkey was like this round, hard sandwich of sorts that looked like it was you could bounce it on the floor, but it was too hard to do that. And there was one bathroom in the cell, in this holding cell, for 19 people. There were about 19 other people in there. There's one toilet with no doors around it. And then, no place to
it was like open? The toilet is open?
Open, yes, open, and it kind of to the back of the room, but open.
With 19 people?
Water, huh?
With 19 people in that one room?
Yes.
I don't think I didn't know that part. Well, and one of the reasons I was so excited to have you on is because a lot of people are experiencing that right now, engaging in acts of civil disobedience, because, of course, I just got a text 10 minutes ago from the city of LA saying that there is a curfew, and some people feel morally obligated to continue protesting. And that raises the possibility of getting arrested. So I'm wondering, do you have any advice for people who do feel the need to protest and engage in civil disobedience, knowing that they may be going to jail, because you knew this was very likely to happen? So what advice do you have for allies or for other protesters who may be marching tonight or later this week and may face arrest? Is there anything that they can do in order to be better prepared?
We were warned in advance to make sure that we did nothing that even appeared like we were resisting arrest. And so we were told to do whatever they say to do, but not to talk, not to say. They could ask you questions and you don't have to answer. So, but to do nothing that would appear like you're resisting arrest, because you could really get into deep trouble. That's a felony.
Well, it's interesting you say that, because resisting arrest avoiding a felony is one thing, but on a strategic level, that comes straight from the Gandhian tradition of nonviolent protest and being a passive resistor, of putting your body on the line and sitting there peacefully. That image that you see throughout the 1960s and the Black Freedom Movement of non-violent citizens being attacked brutally for simply sitting in one place, that image is so much more powerful than physically fighting back. So that's something that I would recommend for allies like ourselves who are hoping to put our bodies on the line in support of this larger movement, is to remember that there are cameras watching, and that that image of police brutality being one-sided is so compelling and important in this moment, because this is the time when we can really learn from our mistakes of the past and make sure that we are upholding the tradition of Gandhi, of Bayard Rustin, the gay black man who trained Martin Luther King Jr. on these tactics of nonviolence. It's important to remember that in 1955 in Montgomery, King's house was full of guns. It wasn't until Bayard Rustin came and told him that you had to dedicate the entirety of your life to nonviolence that the guns went away. The floodlights outside of his house disappeared, even though his house had been bombed. And so I want to urge, especially white folks who are watching and hoping to join these protests, to read up on the history of nonviolent protests, read the words of Bayard Rustin, and how we can be good allies. And so, Mom, thank you for putting your own body on the line. And then, of course, Ilda and Yvonne for having your bodies on the line every single day. Muchas gracias a ustedes. So I think we have some time for questions. I know we have questions for all three of us. So I am going to bring back Vivian. But Mom, one of the most important questions I've received that I saw on the screen while I'm bringing Vivian up here, I wanted to ask you. People, I think, were a little shocked to hear that you may be in your 70s already. I think you kind of let that slip, and I think people may be a little confused about how you look so good. And you've been to jail. What is your secret? I'm going to start with the most important question.
My Mary Kay. I have to give a plug for my Mary Kay.
What is Mary Kay for people who don't know what it is?
Mary Kay is a company that sells cosmetics and skincare, and I've been using it for 45 years.
That's how long you've been selling it. Mary Kay, you drop me off every single day to school in a pink car. Okay, yeah. So I'm not going to blame anyone for my homosexuality, but it certainly made things easier to connect the dots. I will say that. Anyway, Vivian.
I loved that pink car, Eric. All those little girls loved that pink car.
Yeah. Well, so did this little boy. So, yeah. All right, Vivian, thank you for helping out with the questions. I'm going to turn it over to you to ask some questions.
Yeah. So just, this is broadly about your book because we've heard very little about it. Tanya wanted to ask, what drew you to the story of Frank Kameny?
It's a great question. I have one of my final events this week is with Dustin Lance Black, who wrote the Oscar-winning film Milk, about Harvey Milk, and I happened to watch that film just as I was realizing in undergrad that I was obsessed with history, and I realized that I hadn't known very much about his story to begin with, and I wanted to learn more. And so much of queer history is erased and is not told or taught in school curricula, in colleges. And it was that realization of how in the world did I not know this story, even though I'm 20 years old? How did I not know this? And what other stories must be out there? And so while doing that preliminary research, and I would encourage anyone, if you read this book, if you read The Deviant's War, yes, it's about primarily about one person, Frank Kameny, who's one of the grandfathers of the gay rights movement, but there are so many other stories within it that I introduce. Every single chapter begins with a different historical figure who either influenced or was influenced by Frank, including Bayard Rustin, including Sylvia Rivera, Marsha P. Johnson, these people who prove to us that the totality of Pride is borrowed from the Black freedom movement, and that we have gay rights because of trans women of color. So I would encourage anyone to read it. Yes, learn about Frank. Of course, watch Milk and learn about Harvey Milk. Read Lillian Faderman's biography of him, but then let that be an inspiration to learn about the people who continue to be forgotten, the people who may only be literally an endnote in my book or a paragraph, who deserve their own biographies. And so that's how I learned Frank, was realizing he had just passed away and no one had written a book about him, and he had donated hundreds of thousands of pages of documents to the Library of Congress, which was much easier to get to than San Francisco. And busing down there, hopefully they'll be back open soon. Anyone can go. A lot of it is digitized. I'm releasing 100,000 documents also from that I digitized from various archives. So I hope people will learn these stories and learn new names. And it doesn't take a PhD to start doing this research and telling these stories.
Awesome. This question connects perfectly and is a little bit for Mama Savini too. In your view, what is the role of history as a study and a discipline in civic engagement and activism? Why is it so important today?
Mom, you lived it, so I'm going to let you answer. I'll follow up. But why? What is history so important?
Well, you know, reading Eric's book, it was so interesting because way back in the 60s, I did a lot of research for him on the Daughters of Bilitis. And a lot of that research talked about how that organization was formed. It was actually formed by, at the beginning, I think there were like 6 couples. And then Del Martin and Phyllis were like the 7th couple or something, like very small group. So how to grow a movement, how to grow an organization, was reading history. You can see their mistakes. You can see their challenges. I saw some of the same challenges that are described in Eric's book happening live with the organization I was working with. So it was really interesting. So history can teach us a lot of things, and yeah. Yep.
Yvonne, I want to ask you too. Do you get to study history at all in school?
Can you hear me, Evo?
Do you get to study history at all in school?
Yes, a lot.
Why do you think it's important?
I don't know. I think you can learn about a lot of years ago, and yeah. And they always say, right, like history repeats itself. And I think that's so important to recognize that most of the challenges we face, if not all of them, someone's already been through it in the past. Mom, I'm so glad you brought up the DOB. Can you tell, what do you mean by you did research? What exactly was your job as my research assistant? What exactly did you do to help with this book?
It was really pretty fun. I listened to numerous tapes, and as I listened to the tapes, I'm on the computer transcribing all the words. Mm-hmm. And so just page after page of transcriptions of all these different women.
Hours, dozens of hours.
Yeah, so I did mainly on a lot of research, a lot of transcribing of the women that were involved in the Daughters of Bilitis, and it was really interesting. I enjoyed it.
Yeah, if anyone is familiar with the DOB, one of the figures who I was actually just on the phone with yesterday is Tobin Luzon. She wrote one of the very first books on gay liberation called Gay Crusaders, and in the process of writing that book, she recorded hours and hours and hours of interviews with different activists, including people like Del Martin, Phyllis Lyon, and also with Barbara Giddings, her partner.
And so there are dozens of hours of these tapes, and my mom helped transcribe all of these interviews that had never been transcribed before. And there's one, the one I did was Frank's himself, and it was a 10-hour interview. That really, a lot of the information you get about Frank, especially in his early years, because he was really the best of friends with Kay and Barbara. He was very candid about some of his early experiences. So I'm so indebted to Kay, especially Barbara passed away, unfortunately, but Kay is still around. She's in a assisted living facility in Pennsylvania. She's doing all right. And I was just on the phone with a living facility. Mom, I didn't tell you this because you got to know Kay quite a bit through her interview as a young woman. Because the print is like a little small in the book, I was on the phone with the front office of the assisted living facility, getting them the audiobook. So they're putting it on like a laptop for her to listen to the audiobook, and she's like so excited. But the bad news is she said she doesn't like my author photo. It's too serious, because she was really, anyone who doesn't know, Kay Luzon was really the photographer for the homophile movement. So if you look at old editions of The Ladder, so you see images of like Lily Vincennes and Ernestine Eppinger on the early editions of The Ladder, which was totally revolutionary for the time, a lesbian publication. She was the one who took those photos. All the photos of Frank from him marching in 1970 and before that, she took those photos. So she was very opinionated about that one photo, but she liked all the other photos in the book. So I'm glad about that.
Oh, good.
All right. What do you see as the next big hurdle for LGBTQ equality in America today in the post-2015 landscape?
Ooh, interesting.
Big question.
Yeah, I mean, I just posted, if anyone hasn't seen it yet, right before this, I posted like a 40-minute video about why we have a moral obligation to be joining the current fight and explicitly declaring that Black trans lives matter, and to return pride and its totality. Not just Stonewall, not just acknowledging the importance of trans women of color at Stonewall, but acknowledging the importance of the Black freedom movement and trans women of color in the totality of Pride, and making Pride itself as an annual holiday a act of resistance once again. And I encourage anyone, if you're reading the book, even if it takes a while, go to the chapter called The Pride and read the description of the very first Pride March almost exactly 50 years ago on June 28th, 1970, and what that initial Pride Parade looked like, because it wasn't a parade, it was a march. And that's what we need to be doing, and we need to be asking, who did we forget and who are we leaving behind now? And that's a conversation that we need to be having immediately, especially because of A, the current circumstances of the national reckoning that we're experiencing, and B, because all the parades are canceled to begin with because of this pandemic. This is a unique moment in our history for us to reevaluate, rebuild, and return pride. It says Vivian is not disconnected, is disconnected. See, I'm supposed to be able to like, oh, and she's gone. Oh, well, see, that's the one thing, is it's very humbling, because like when you get on your soapbox, like usually you're like, and mic drop. But then when you're in a digital platform like this, it's like, and the mic doesn't exist anymore. Okay, so I'm going to pick some questions.
Hello, can you hear me?
Oh,
there we go.
All right.
Sorry. I don't know what happened. Wi-Fi just, sometimes craps out for a sec. I had a perfectly aligned question. This person asks, what would you say to allies who want to speak out and engage, but are nervous about not saying or doing it perfectly?
Ooh,
that's a good question.
Yeah, I totally understand that. I understand we have call out culture right now. I think people are scared to speak up because they're afraid of doing something wrong. And I say, own it, right? Like, we are all human beings. Yes, your intentions matter. And yes, when you speak up, there is a chance that you may say something wrong. You may make a mistake. I've done it plenty of times. The key is how you respond when you have been called out, right? When someone says that was the wrong thing to say, you shouldn't say that. All you have to do is say, thank you for informing me of that. Let me fix it. Let me try again. All right. Thank you. Because that is someone saying, I understand that you are trying to do the right thing, but this is what you actually should be saying. So you should be thanking them. And if you do that, you make a mistake, you say something that's like, maybe you don't understand how offensive saying all lives matter is, right? Maybe it doesn't like come across quite yet that it's the equivalent of saying all lives matter at a funeral, right? Maybe you haven't made that connection yet, but once you realize I've made a mistake, just say, thank you, I'm sorry, let me try again. And you will be respected so much for that. And so take the risk. This is the moment. This is the moment to make these mistakes. So let's try it. I'll have your back. All right.
I just got a message from Sarah Gatchins on Facebook. So just wanted to shout her out, our high school English teacher who taught us both many things about reading and writing. So I'm sure she's watching. Shout out to Miss Gatchins. We owe a lot to you.
To everyone. The book is dedicated to all my teachers. And the second clause is the most important of whom is my mother. But I really do mean it when I say dedicated to all my teachers, even though, Mom, you're definitely the most important one. It wouldn't be possible without everyone who's taught, including Ilda and Yvonne, for teaching me how to be a more just citizen, not just of Austin, but of the world.
All right, one more question for you, Eric, and then we have a couple of quick questions for Mama Savini about how folks can make a difference for Ilda and Yvonne. This question is from Jessie Wang. It might be the Jessie Wang we know. I don't know if it is. Shout out to Jessie. History and change is happening around us every day. As a historian, Eric, any recommendations on how we can best help capture the stories of those around us and be a part of storytelling that makes a difference?
Ooh, that's such a good question. I love that idea of capturing history. I think, especially right now in this month, in this moment, it's very tempting, I think, for people just to like be producing their own content, right? Everyone's used to producing their own selfies, trying to maximize number of likes and engagement for their own material. And I think this could be a moment where we say, let's change that norm and make it less about amplifying my own content and instead about amplifying other people's content and other people's voices who have otherwise been forgotten. And so one way as an ally you can do that is link out, right? Or just literally take a screenshot if you see another account that is saying where to donate your dollars or where to have a protest, post it, right? We had our day of silence yesterday. Now I think is our time to start amplifying other voices and also, like you said, to be capturing them. So when you go to protest, videotape, right? If you hear a speech from someone who is a leader in the Black Lives Matter movement, record it and post it. That's still your content, but it's amplifying a voice that otherwise your own followers in Texas or across the world might not otherwise hear.
Love it. A couple folks asked some great questions about how they can make a difference for Ilda and Yvonne. One of those was, are there keywords to use in communications with Congress in order to make the biggest difference?
Good question. Keywords. I would say be a champion. Be a champion. We need a champion that's going to fight for people in sanctuary. Make them a priority. I think that's another good phrase. Make immigrants in sanctuary a priority, because they tend not to do that at all. And just to mention what Eric just said about amplifying the voice on social media, that's exactly what we ask people to do for Ilda, Yvonne, and Illyrio, is to post things, maybe comparing the time that they're in quarantine to imagine what they're experiencing with 4 years of being in quarantine. We've been in quarantine a few months. Imagine 4 years. And just pictures and things like that. But we also have a petition that would be great for people to sign, and I could give you, Vivian, the link for the petition also. And then, of course, we already talked about the link for the masks. Actually, it's for the materials. It's for people to donate money for the materials. And then Ilda and Yvonne make the masks and then donate them to different organizations. I think we've already given, I think Illyrio, I think, gave about 130 masks to the Salvation Army. And Ilda and Yvonne have been giving to our homeless ministry at our church at St. Andrews. And they've been, Ilda, do you want to tell them what you've been doing for the pantry, the food pantry? Yvonne, can you translate? Ilda, ¿quieres hablar un poco de las máscaras y cómo estás ayudando a las personas para darles comida?
Pues cada 15 días que hay comida, entonces yo en cada bolsa que ellos preparan para entregar la comida, yo les pongo una máscara cada uno.
So every 15 days, the food pantry is open, and good, you know. Is that one? Can you open it up? ¿Puedes abrirlo para mostrarnos mejor cómo es? So she puts a mask in the bag for the food pantry. Everybody gets, there's like hundreds of bags that she puts the mask in. Very pretty, muy bonito. So she's making lots of masks to donate for the food pantry too.
Sí.
That's awesome. And perfect segue to the next question somebody had asked on Facebook. Is there somewhere that we can donate to Ilda and Yvonne specifically, but also to families in sanctuary in general?
Good question. Well, to Ilda and Yvonne and Illyrio would be the mask link. Okay.
And so that's on the little I in the description if you click that at the top.
Yeah, the little I in the
And I'll post it. For anyone watching on Facebook, I'll post it in the comments. The link where you can donate directly to Ilda and Yvonne. I think we are out of time, unfortunately. I wish we could continue this forever. I think talking about the intersectionality of different movements in different causes is so incredibly important because we're all in this together. So thank you, Mom. Thank you, Ilda. Muchas gracias a ustedes. I am so grateful to have your voices, Mom, to have your activism and your guidance throughout my entire life. Thank you, Vivian. And also I want to give a shout out again to book people. I know a lot of different bookstores are actually out of stock of the Deviants War. So I want to encourage you to order from book people no matter where you are. Because independent bookstores right now, as we are having these difficult conversations, they are the ones who give us the space, even if it's digital, to have these conversations. And it's so essential that they continue to exist and that we support them. So please consider purchasing this book or any book from book people or your own independent bookshop. Thank you all for listening. Despite, yes, Bob?
I just wanted to say I'm so proud of you, Eric.
You're going to make me cry again.
I'm going to cry. I'm just so proud of you. And I love you.
Thank you, everyone. And thank you, Mom. I love you all. I know there's a lot of pain in this world, but I hope this has brought you some joy and also some action. So thank you all again. And